There is nowhere to run. There is nowhere to hide. So I'm Anna Ray. I'm a senior UK lawyer. I've been practicing law for about 27 years, studying it for over 30. And I've been working with a team of UK lawyers and international lawyers now for about a year. We've been drilling down into the legal analysis, the evidential analysis, working with experts all around the world, hearing their evidence about what's happening. So medical experts, scientific experts. And as I say, what the legal analysis is that this is crimes against humanity that are being committed. It is genocide. It's biowarfare. And that's the view of senior lawyers from around the world. We're all senior lawyers who are capable of reading the law, understanding it, applying it. And, you know, most of us on the front line are litigators, so this is what we do. You know, we look at the evidence, we look at the law, and we bring cases to sort it out and uphold the rule of law. So, you know, that is us all being peer reviewed by each other. One of the other ways that we're tackling this is by identifying who the perpetrators are of the harm that's being caused. So for those of you who don't understand, we are a common law jurisdiction in this country, and lots of countries around the world claim their jurisdiction from the UK. And the common law general principle is do no harm. First, do no harm. And what that means is that you don't get to harm anybody's person, property, liberty, etc. And that is a constitutional duty to act to prevent harm. Omitting to act is as guilty as acting to cause harm. So what we're doing is we're identifying who is injecting people, who's masking them, who's testing them, who is breaching the bodily and psychiatric integrity of the individual. Because again, under common law, voluntas agreti suprema lex, that over his or own mind or body, the individual is sovereign. And nobody gets to derogate from that fundamental, inalienable human right. We are all sovereign. We are all equal in the eyes of God. We're all equal under the rule of law. No one is above it. And a fundamental maxim of law is that you have sovereignty over your own mind and body. Nobody gets to break that, not even in times of public emergency threatening the life of the nation. There is no right to derogate from the fundamental right to life, from the right not to be tortured or to receive cruel, inhumane or degrading treatment, not to have your right to privacy and your right to family life affected. Those rights cannot be derogated from, even in war. The only time it's lawful is if it's in a lawful act of war. Well, when you read the war conventions, means and methods of warfare are not unlimited. You cannot, for example, run a campaign of terror against the occupied enemy. You cannot conduct live human experiments, give people medical treatment without their informed consent voluntarily given. That is against the law, even in wartime. So the idea that a bunch of bureaucrats in 2020, 2021 get to come along and set aside our rule of law, claiming there's a public health emergency, is not legal, it's not lawful, it's not moral, it's not ethical. So what we're doing is identifying people who are breaking the law, and we're serving them with a notice of liability, which says to the individual, you personally are causing harm. You personally are in breach of not only the common law, but in the international treaties, the European conventions, UK domestic law. And we're saying to people, you are individually accountable and liable in your personal capacity, criminally and civilly. There is nowhere to run. There is nowhere to hide. No one is going to defend you because the law says you must uphold the law, you must not cause harm, and you are personally liable. So what I've done is we've drafted a notice of liability. It runs to 170 odd pages. And in this, what you do is you set out the name of the person, who they're acting as. So for example, I've just used the name Jane Brown, acting as, for example, head teacher of the school, name and address, and then whoever else is involved in perpetrating these crimes. And what we do is we set out the law. So the first one being, you know, prima non nocere. Prima non nocere is first do no harm. You have a duty of care. You have legal, lawful, moral and ethical requirement to obtain freely informed consent. And then I set out, literally there are pages and pages and pages of the law, including, for example, the Nuremberg Code, Part 1 of the Schedule Medicine for Human Use Clinical Trials Regulations 2004, the Declaration of Helsinki, the Oviedo Convention, the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. And I read this out to you earlier. Can I just read the preamble? I just want to read a little bit of the preamble, which says, whereas recognition of the inherent dignity and of the equal and inalienable rights of all members of the human family is the foundation of freedom, justice and peace in the world, whereas disregard for, and contempt for human rights have resulted in barbarous acts which have outraged the conscience of mankind, bearing in mind this is 1948, right? And the advent of a world in which human beings shall enjoy freedom of speech, note that Reuters and Facebook and all the other platforms who are trying to censor us, and belief and freedom from fear and want has been proclaimed as the highest aspiration of the common purpose. Now this is the most important point. Whereas it is essential, if man is not compelled to have recourse as a last resort to rebellion against tyranny and oppression, that human rights should be protected by the rule of law. And it goes on and sets out Article 1, all humans are born free and equal in dignity and rights. Article 1 of the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights says all peoples have the right to determination. By virtue of that right, they freely determine their political status and freely pursue their economic, social and cultural development. And Article 2, everyone is entitled to the rights and freedoms set out in the Declaration. Article 3, everyone has the right to life, liberty and security of person. And so it goes on and explains that those articles from the Universal Declaration of Human Rights are enshrined in multiple human rights treaties and conventions, international, European and UK. So it sets it all out, all of those laws, all of those rights, says that there's no right to derogate, as I've said, and then it talks about the evidence, about the fact that, there is no public health emergency on the evidence. There are alternative treatments. There are early treatments that are being denied to people. I set out the evidence of where, for example, there's been a 70% reduction in mortality in countries where they've allowed hydrochloroquine. Where ivermectin was used in India, the most prominent examples include the areas of Delhi, Uttar Pradesh, etc. Cases have dropped by 98%, 97%, 94%. Uttar Pradesh is COVID-free. So I set out pages and pages of the evidence that's given from world experts, open letters, calls for it to be stopped, pages and pages of it, okay? And then it sets out the legal position, which is that you don't get to break the law, and it sets out the contractual provisions. And in fact, they've given an oath of office, they have a duty of care, you are accountable, the GMC guidance, the NMC guidance, there's a call for evidence, 45 points of evidence that needs to be fulfilled, because the burden of evidence, the burden of proof rather, is on those claiming the right to derogate to prove that it's necessary, it's proportionate, it's evidence-based, it's reasonable, it's rational, it's the least restrictive measures. Paragraph 58 of the Syracuse Principles specifically states that you don't get to do this, right? So this sets out all of that and says to people, you will be held responsible. Now that's very powerful because, once people realise that they are going to be personally held responsible, they then have to stop. So it's a cease and desist as well.
Absolutely. So thank you for explaining all of that and showing us. Does that mean that if somebody was to serve a vaccination centre or a school, that would cover everybody within that that's operating?
Yeah, basically, as I say, the person who's injecting someone is committing the actual act. Anyone who's facilitating that, promoting it, marketing, is like aiding and abetting. If they're silent, they are complicit. And so, as I say, you have a constitutional duty to act to prevent harm. Saying silent's not an option.
No. Thank you. And do they all need to be named on there?
Yes, yeah. Because it's the individual living man or woman.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So when somebody would be serving it, would have to take
Yeah, yeah.